Hello, and welcome to another episode of How to Build a Theatre, a podcast charting the creation of a new theatre here in Brussels, Belgium. My name is Edward Macmillan, and I'm the founder and artistic director of the Bridge Theatre.
My name is Phil Wilcox, and I'm a musician based in London in the UK.
Hi, Phil. How's it going this month?
Oh, very good, thanks, Ed. Yeah, it's been a great month. What are we in now? April. I'm on tour, doing shows all over the place, visiting lots of lovely new theatres, which is great, and lovely new cities, which I haven't been in. And yeah, we've just had Easter, which is always just a bit of a change. So lots of new, exciting things to do, some concerts and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Did you have a nice couple of weeks?
Oh, yes. We've had a very interesting couple of weeks here because we're very close now to signing the agreement on our very first venue.
Amazing.
Which is very exciting. I'm not sure I told you this before
No.
we recorded this podcast, but yes, it's so we've identified a place. I can't quite reveal where or what it is, but it's in the centre of Brussels, and we're now just finalising the negotiations with the landlord. And if all goes to plan, that will enable us to actually begin our proper first season of professional theatre in September.
Amazing. You'll have finally the Bridge will have a physical presence in Belgium, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and it's also, I'm very happy about that because, you know, we've been using these past few months to really look for a suitable place for us to begin our activities, and that, you know, as anyone who's ever searched for a flat or a house, you know, it takes a long time to look at these different options, to explore them, to see the pluses and minuses of these places, and looking for a space which could become a theatre. It requires some very specific requirements in order to make it feasible for a theatre. You need to have, I don't know, good access. You need to have a big playing space. You know, there's lots of different things to think about.
That's right, and of course you were never really looking for. I suppose it was always an option, but you were never really looking for. How do you call it? Like a red velvet theatre, you know, with all the seats in the line, the red velvet seats, and the lovely cross arch and the curtains. It would be lovely, and of course it works for many. But theatres these days can come in all shapes and sizes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, Phil. I think that artistically, we would want some flexibility in the space that we have eventually. I mean, the space that we've identified for this very first venue is quite small, and I don't think it's going to offer the flexibility of having different arrangements of seating. So, for example, for our first production of Vincent River back in October, November, we, as you remember, Phil, we did that in the round, so the audience on all four sides. And I'm not sure we'll be able to do something quite the same in this new space, but there is some kind of, we can play with it a little bit, and I'm hoping that it will give enough flexibility, at least, in order that we can have fun, I guess, with our first season of work.
Amazing. So when's the housewarming party? When do you get the keys?
So
if all goes to plan.
Exactly. If all goes to plan, fingers crossed. So we hope to get the keys, per se, at the beginning of July, giving us the summer period to kind of make the necessary alterations, move in, and then to be ready, as I said, to present our first season of work in September. So that's all I can say for now. That's the plan, at least. We'll check in next month to see if that's actually going to happen.
There it is. You heard it here first. Very exciting news as well. So, but there's activities still to come over summer, isn't there? There's workshops and maybe a show even before you get into the new space.
Yes, exactly. So we have our workshops ongoing. We actually have 3 different weekly workshops ongoing at the moment. So we have our weekend workshops on Sundays, which is 3 hours of acting, singing, and dancing on Sunday mornings. We also have our act workshops on Monday evenings, looking at different aspects of acting. And then we're also just starting at the beginning of May our play reading workshops, which gives participants an opportunity to have a look at different plays by various Anglophone playwrights. So very exciting. And then, yes, exactly, we have a summer program lined up, some workshops, and also a musical theatre-based production, a night of the musicals, on the 21st of June. So very exciting. Very, very exciting.
It's all go, isn't it? Well, speaking of theatres and their physical spaces, do you think it's time that we introduce our latest guest to the podcast because he is all about the physical space of theatre.
I think that's a very good idea, Phil. So, maybe just as a brief word of introduction, our guest this week, he is actually a chartered engineer. He's a partner at a company called Bureau Happold, which is a global practice of engineers, consultants, and advisors. And he also is co-coordinator of something called the Theatre Green Book. So looking at ways to make the theatre industry more sustainable. And his name is Andrew Wylie. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Great to have you on. We'll get into a bit more of the meat of what you do and who you are and why we invited you on this podcast in a little bit. But I think, Phil, you probably have a few quick-fire questions for him.
Let's do it. Let's just get straight into it. So, Andrew, welcome. Where are you coming from this week? Where are you broadcasting from?
So I'm fortunate to live in a lovely Cotswold village outside Bath. So a little village called Biddeston, but I work out of an office in the centre of Bath and also spend a fair bit of time in London as well.
Beautiful. Oh, Bath's a beautiful city. Okie dokie then. Our quick fire questions. Do you have a favourite colour? Let's start with the big ones.
Do I have a favourite colour? Oh, there we go. Probably green.
Green, lovely.
Particularly at this time of year. Spring, the freshness of leaves on trees, outdoors, colour green, not irrespective of Green Book, anything like that. Genuinely, I love my outdoor space and being in nature, so green would be my colour.
So you might have answered my third question as well, skipping my second one. Do you have a favourite season? Is that spring?
I like all the seasons. I love the changing of the seasons. I love it when you notice the difference when it's just that bit warmer and you can step out in spring. And I'd say probably if you're forcing me, twisting my arm behind my back, I would say spring. But I love the changing of the seasons.
Absolutely. And we're experiencing that right now. I mean, it's beautiful weather at the moment in the UK. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
If you ask my wife, she'll probably say I'm a night owl. So yeah, let's go with night owl.
Night owl. Do you have a favourite drink, or I could broaden that out to a favourite flavour in a drink?
I like my whiskies, so Scotch. I'm not. I would say my palate. I'm not an out and out connoisseur, but I do enjoy the romance of remote Scottish breweries and the subtleties of different flavours and less subtleties in some of a good single malt.
Oh, beautiful. Cakes or biscuits, or neither?
I'd probably say cake. Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
I'm definitely a dog person.
That's a fine line, yeah. I agree. Kindred spirits here.
I would go as far as to say I'm actually, unfortunately, allergic to cats. So that's forced my hand when I was young.
Oh, dear. Two more questions for you. What was your favourite subject at school?
Oh, good question. And it probably sort of helped direct me in the career that I took. It was probably physics. Yeah, certainly the sciences, physics and maths.
And finally, the deepest, possibly the darkest quickfire question we've had so far is there anything that scares you? Have you got a phobia of anything?
I'd struggle to say that there are things that I'm not so keen on, but I wouldn't say that there's I'm out and out scared of anything. I try to. When I was younger, I used to. My parents still remind me this actually that I used to be scared of heights. I wouldn't climb to the top of the school playground, a climbing frame in the playground, and yet with travel and new friends, I started mountaineering and rock climbing, and have been fortunate enough to climb 4,000 metre peaks, and it's transitioned into a healthy respect of heights, but no longer a phobia.
You have clearly quite a sciencey, mathsy background. You're an engineer by training, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, we're talking about theatre here. So how would you describe your relationship with the world of theatre?
So I would reflect on I've always sort of felt that I've been fortunate to either make the right decisions or been given the opportunity that have sort of led me to my love of designing and working in theatre buildings. I think one of the key things was actually when I went to university, I didn't know really where my career was going to go, and I had chosen to do a civil engineering and structural engineering degree, but I chose to do this at the University of Bath, and the course I enrolled in had a joint first year architecture and engineering degree. So I studied alongside architects and undertook some of the design work with the architectural students. So it immediately gave me access and an appreciation of the creative requirements of building design. My role as an engineer is a collaborative role, and is one that to create and design a great building really does require a creative approach. It's not just numbers and force flows. You have to be in a very collaborative position with the other design team members, and particularly the architect in the building design. So then fast forward on, probably I graduated. I started working in practice. I, after a few years, moved to my current company, Bureau Happold. But probably after 3 or 4 years of working at Bureau Happold, my boss left, and we were just about to start, or I'd been asked just to go to Stratford-on-Avon to have a look at a potential bridge over the river adjacent to the theatre. And after that, doing a little bit of a study, that was a precursor to the transformation project for the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. I was straight in at the deep end, as we like to do at Bureau Happold with everybody. Is if you can float, we'll give you a job, or we'll let you carry on in what you're doing. And I've really enjoyed the challenge of working with a fantastic set of architects and a fantastic team, and leading a fantastic team in the design and of the transformation of the Royal Shakespeare Theatre. No theatre design experience before then, and I would say as a patron, yes, I had visited local regional theatres before then, but never really appreciated the magic of what goes into making theatre. But it was the Royal Shakespeare Transformation Project was a massive learning curve for me, and really got me enchanted with the processes of making theatre, but also saw how important the space which you make theatre and present theatre in is, and how that can really influence and is a creative boundary to what goes on stage.
There's a lovely link in there as well, that a bridge in Stratford-upon-Avon brings you to theatre. And here you are on the Bridge podcast talking about theatre.
There we go.
So it's interesting because obviously a lot of our guests come from some sort of theatre background via schooling and that sort of stuff, and have worked their way through and then found either their niche or their market or their calling in the land of theatre, whereas you seem to have come via the sciences, via maths. It has to be said, actually, often great musicians, great theatre makers, theatre and creative people have also an affinity with maths and physics and the beauty of the sort of nature. But it seems that you've come via that way and sort of found theatre in a different route. You know, you've fallen into it in a different way. What makes designing a theatre different to designing other buildings?
That you can look at this from different perspectives, and there are different things that contribute to this. One is that as an engineer, building engineer, it's a building typology that the owner and user are passionate about, engaged in, and really spur their design team on to understand their needs. You're not designing to a formula of an office building typology, or maybe a school, or so. I love and flourish on that challenge that's put out by a really engaged client that is always challenging us, and really is someone that is going to live in and own and flourish in what gets produced at the end of a design and construction project. So I'd say that is a very key difference to a lot of other building typologies. And then the next key difference, I'd say, is the complexity of the building. The relationships of use, what goes on in the building, the complexity of what goes on stage as far as the scenic capacity, the need to be able to accommodate different user groups, and front of house, back of house. All of this comes together to make where the functioning of the building, the successful functioning of building, absolutely supports the successful functioning of the organisation, and their mission to create is so. I think those are two: the complexity of the building and the owner occupier organisations. I think are two key differences, which present fantastic challenges.
There must be so many elements to a theatre, because obviously maybe people listening to this think, well, surely you just need seats, toilets, and a space for people to move around on. But then you broaden, and we broaden our image of a theatre, and we know, certainly going via backstage, that you've got to have so much more than that. It's got to be more than just seats, and probably now flexible seating patterns, but also flexible performance situations, scenic situations. But then also access has got to be right. The flow of people, and quite possibly a large number of people through a building, and making sure that they've got the facilities that they require, the backstage, the dressing rooms, the tech requirements, loading in and loading out, being able to store two or three sets, flying things in and out in a fly tower and stuff like that. There must be a huge amount of different aspects of a theatre to think about.
Indeed, and I'd say what you've just described there is one end of a spectrum of the types of spaces that could be used for theatre, and let's say is a more common typology that I've spent more time looking at. But equally, the found space that is hosting a short run of a performance that's specifically designed for that. To make that work as simplistically and as efficiently, but also as beautifully as the space should allow it, and the whole reason for it being a found space, it takes design and engineering to ensure that you still have adequate facilities for patrons, that the fire escape and everything is going to work, and that we don't end up cluttering the space with fire partitions and a whole host of other paraphernalia that takes away from what you're trying to create in the space. So creating simplicity can require a large amount of thought, planning, engineering, and architectural planning as well, to make that type of space work at the other extreme. But yes, you're absolutely right. The logistical interfaces, the front of house, the back of house, the dressing room spaces, the load in, the having space to store scenery and present scenery, all requires a large amount of coordination and collaboration and thinking.
I mean, I guess also you kind of mentioned it earlier with your different typologies, but really each theatre is quite a unique product, which that does make it markedly different from just an office block. I know, okay, yes, each office block is different, but there are very specific things for each theatre, and I guess there must be a certain gratification in overcoming the challenges of that specific space that you're in.
Absolutely, and I found myself looking at adaptations to existing historic buildings. So that's something which, is wonderful to work it with historic building fabric and to see and to how to give an existing building new life for the next 50 years. But absolutely, every building is different. You're not on a treadmill churning out the same type of thing. Every client, every theatre organisation has a different emphasis, has a different approach to the way they want to work and present art, and has a different audience demographic as well. So uniqueness and your experience of having done one before always gives you something to bring to the next opportunity, but it's not that is, or the next project. It's not that is you're cookie cuttering something straight out into the next build, into the next theatre design, and that keeps you fresh and on your toes, and is a really enjoyable part of working in the theatre industry as a building designer.
I suppose thinking about it as well, you must have a lot of input from community and community leaders as well, because unlike, let's say, a business or an international conglomerate coming together to build a skyscraper in a city, going, right, well, we need to have umpteen square metre of office space, flexible office space to work for us in this way in order to make the rent and to attract in people. You are, as you say, slotting in often possibly even or adapting an older building, but you're generally going to be slotting into a town centre, a city centre, a central hub. And theatres these days are so much more than seating and performance spaces. I'm in Chester Storyhouse Theatre at the moment, and at the front of that is a library in the same building, and there's a beautiful restaurant as well here, and it's quite rightly, it's absolutely part of a community hub where people can come. They see the shows that are on, but they'll also come for dinner before or after. They go for drinks. They might not come for a show. They might come for dinner to see what's on next time. They must have also so much in terms of community voicing to do as well.
Absolutely, and there are a whole set of it's become I was going to say recent, but actually it's being able for a theatre to be economically viable, the ability to have the doors open for more than half an hour before the show and a short period of time after the curtain falls is really important, and therefore being able to understand what could support a business plan for the theatre. Now, be that being able to provide the community facilities and the council facilities as a library, or whether it is just being able to provide more community space and have a cafe and meeting space. It also has the co-benefit of introducing people who might not want to cross the threshold and come into a theatre because it's not seen as, they weren't brought up going to the theatre, but being able to meet with other mothers and bring their children to have a drink in a cafe that's open at 10 o'clock in the morning whilst you're rehearsing is something which now has to be considered. How is the theatre, and it actually becomes a key thought in how the theatres can become more sustainable, or how any building can become more sustainable. You've invested the materials, the heating of the space, so therefore you want to get extract the maximum out of that space. So the more I always look at so the industry looks at buildings that the most sustainable buildings are buildings that already exist, and then then you're looking at how the building is maximising its potential. And it's maximising its use. So a 24/7 theatre that has been around for 100 years, you're onto a winner there.
I think that makes a nice connection with the Theatre Green Book. and I'd like to turn to that for a little bit now. So, Andrew, it would be great to hear from your words, actually, what is the Theatre Green Book? Because I'm sure quite a lot of our listeners won't have ever heard of it before. And how did it come about?
Yeah, certainly. So I have always been, and through my education and then the work which I've done, sustainability and the need to improve the quality of the way we go about designing buildings to reduce their environmental impact has always been something very close to my heart. And I've often reflected that if only we'd written the brief or told the building user how to use the building in a better way, that we could make greater steps. It's not just about what we do as a designer, it's how the buildings get commissioned, but also how buildings get used. So in that, I regularly, or I'm a member of the Association of British Theatre Technicians and work closely and support the Theatres Trust, and pre-COVID spent a fair bit of time working with them to help them look at what their response to the climate emergency that we're in. And we were working we looked at the declarations that the sector was making, but actually then COVID hit and it was devastating for the UK theatre industry, and I found myself along with my co-authors and co-collaborators on this, Paddy Dillon at Renew Theatre, spending time on plenty of Zoom calls, talking with theatre practitioners who had the time to engage. And really the message that came back was, we know that there's an emergency, we know we need to do something about this, but how? It really was around that we understand the need to make change, but we really need the practical how to. And with the Theatre Trust, Association of British Theatre Technicians, we got commissioned to start to develop to engage with really broad spectrum of everybody involved in creating theatre, to challenge and hear what was needed. What a lot of this knowledge was held in small pockets through champions that sat within the industry. I think we had more than 20 workshops. We certainly had at least 300 responses to very detailed questionnaires. We met with at least 150 participants on sets of workshops, and numerous one-to-one calls and discussions. And through that sort of information and fact finding, the structure and the basis of the Theatre Green Book was born. And so the Theatre Green Book is constructed in 3 volumes. Volume 1 is the first volume which we worked on, the productions. So this is the guidance, which is a set of standards set around baseline, intermediate and advanced, for working towards more sustainable production methods within theatres. That volume 1 also contains what we call the principles, so a very detailed set of information, resources, and explanation that support the guidance, those standards, and then so that this can be accessible for someone who's deeply involved in the activities of theatre production, or it's someone that wants to understand this from a more remote view. We have the principles. The first section of the volume is the principles. So this is the key headlines of what is necessary to achieve the improvements needed as outlined in the book. So that's volume 1, productions. We then moved on to volume 2, which has a very similar structure, which is for buildings. So this is really the building fabric, the building systems, to ensure that we really are driving down energy use within the buildings, and providing a planning tool to enable buildings to reduce their carbon footprint. And then volume 3 is this, again, same structure with the principles. Sorry, the at a glance, the quick section to easy access section, then the principles, and then the guidance, the standards, but all focused around the operations of the building, from ticketing to bars, food, etc. Everything which is part of the day-to-day operation of the theatre building. So it is a collective for every facet of the life of a theatre, from productions, buildings, and operations. It is a set of guidance and standards that will be common for all building type, all ages, all sizes, all scales of theatres.
It's amazing, Andrew. It's just it's amazing to hear about this, Andrew. And I just had a look on the website as well, and I see you've got books 1, 2, and 3 all up there and ready to go. This material is all out there and free to use. Is that right? So there's sort of free guidance for everybody to use.
Yep, absolutely. Free to use. www.thetheatregreenbook.com. Please use it. Please share stories around using it. Please provide feedback. There are also toolkits online and as part of the volumes. They're all PDF volumes, and they do get updated as we get more great ideas and issues and things move on. We recognise that sustainable improvements to processes and buildings are changing all the time. So it's not seen as a static piece of work.
It's such an incredible piece of work, really, and pioneering, I would say, as well, globally. I mean, I'm not sure whether there's also been efforts in the US at all, but I definitely know within the theatre industry here in Belgium, there's been, and probably wider in Europe, I haven't seen that many conversations about sustainability, perhaps in a few different fora around Europe, and it's really an example of how we can use this hive mind, this collective knowledge, to really make a difference and improve things in our own small way. And really, we all have to play our part. I mean, one thing that always, for me, going into this, creating a new theatre, for me, it's always been important to put sustainability very present in what we do. At the moment, for us, it's very much kind of a value, but I'm not sure we're really implementing it very well. So the Theatre Green Book, for example, for us is a fantastic tool for us to have really practical examples of what we can actually do to make ourselves more sustainable, to live up to the words we put on paper, at least. So yeah, so thanks a lot for a start for putting it together. It's fantastic resource.
It's not your primary role for any organiser. If it's not your primary role, but it's something you're passionate about, it can come across as overwhelming. The amount of, where do you get your advice from? So and so says you should be putting solar panels on, and so says that we should be insulating and double glazing. What we've tried to do is distill this down into a set of guidance and a set of processes, but also being able to detail out how, like making theatre, like designing buildings, this is a collaboration and it's not one person's responsibility. So in productions, we detail out all of the different roles within theatre making and what their contribution to, what that person's and individual's contribution is to the end goal. So not only is there a lot of information in this, we've tried to provide a hierarchy, organisation that can help guide and not make the whole subject overwhelming for large organisations, but maybe more critically for small organisations where there isn't a sustainability manager within the organisation, and everybody needs to lean in and contribute to this. And when you then start having this as a common goal, you'll be surprised what differences and how it can affect and guide the work that you make, the way that you run your building, the type of building that you're in, and the type of how your building will evolve in the future.
Of course, because the question of being green and sustainability is if possibly even the biggest conversation that goes on at the moment in all walks of life. And of course, for many that will be, for most of us, I think closest to home will be the heating and insulation of our homes, and whether we use sustainable forms of energy coming into our homes. And of course, as you're just saying there, I'm just having a look through the Green Book, Book 1, you go beyond the bricks and mortar of the theatre, which is amazing as well. You talk about props and scenery, costumes, hair and makeup, lighting, I guess over the last 10 years, most lighting in most theatres, if they've had the money, has changed from the old lamps to LEDs, which will have a good impact on the environment when you're making props and scenery out of stuff which is going to be mulched down, and is made of wood or something like that, or whether it's going to be used for another production. It's great because you're just posing not only the questions of, like, I think for all of us to make we're making decisions, aren't we? It's like people who decide to eat a little bit less meat in a week. You're just making choices, and of course with this it seems like you're just posing those questions but actually offering in many cases a solution. If you want to do this a bit greener, here's the way to do it. And it's just that, it's those choices that we make, individual choices.
Absolutely. And thinking through those choices, allowing yourself to. One thing I think of a lot on this in the design of buildings, operation of buildings, time is a really important factor. We have an emergency and we want to change now. We're restless for progress on this. So in one sense, time is against us. But actually, if we allow ourselves time in the planning of what we're creating, we can plan and we can investigate. And we can investigate whether we can reuse props which have that we may not have in our in our building, as opposed to making new. We can ensure that we have everything that we need, so that we don't need to be doing last minute Amazon orders for something to turn up on time. So investing in time and people's time, as opposed to stuff, be that in operating the building or putting on show, is a really good mantra to have. So whilst there are lots of different solutions, there are some overarching principles, and I would definitely be saying have time to digest, have time to read, and have time to think about what you're going to be doing and how you might be able to do that in a less impactful way.
I think you've just answered my next question, to be honest, Andrew. So I was going to ask you what are the best ways for a theatre to become more sustainable? I mean, from what you're saying is actually, you just said it, invest more in time, less in things. And I think that's a really valuable lesson for us all to take on board. I wonder if there are other practical ways you have on the top of your head or from the Green Book that you could suggest. How can a theatre become more sustainable?
I think on activities and productions, I think that the time element I just described is a really, really important mantra. If I'm then thinking about the building volume 2, I think, I know the better you understand your building, the better you understand where you're leaking energy, the better you understand where you're not turning things off, where you've got things plugged in that don't need to be plugged in, if you like, from a very high level point of view, is really important. So understanding your building, because the moment you start to get curious about that, the moment you start thinking that there's opportunities to not only save carbon here but to save money. Now the next step of understanding is is doing would be to build a building sustainability plan, and it's currently going through trialling with Irish theatre groups, but we'll very soon be releasing the building sustainability tool, which is effectively an online questionnaire which requires you to understand your building and be able to answer a very detailed set of questions about your building. So you'll have to get down and dirty and inquisitive and knowledgeable about your building, from insulation to larger buildings that might have building management systems, to be able to, where we pose you a set of questions, and out of that we generate a set of potential interventions that could save energy, save carbon. And those that will then be ordered from quick wins through maintenance projects through to capital investment projects. So in answer to the question, how can theatres save and be more sustainable, investing time in understanding your building and getting on with doing a home survey, using when available the home survey tool, but if not, just doing this yourself and exploring the topics that are set out in volume 2 will generate you a plan, and an organised plan is a really good starting point, so that you can plan your building maintenance to make sure that it is it's taking you on a progressive journey of improvement.
Sounds like very sage advice from a scientist there. Planning is is key. Andrew, I think we're running out of time. This was super interesting to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, I mean, I've already taken a look through the Theatre Green Book, and I will be telling people here in Brussels about it, because I think it's such a useful resource. Yeah, so thank you for giving your thoughts, giving your time, and yeah, I don't know. Do you have any last words for us on sustainability?
Well, from a perspective of Europe, we are in the process of translating the Theatre Green Book into, I think it's 5 or 6 European languages. German, I think, is already up on the website, but there will be. I'm not going to embarrass myself and promise books in languages that I'm not 100% sure yet. But we are in the process of translating, so it will still be accessible through the same website. But I think theatre and theatre makers are collaborators. They care about their buildings, and you care about the planet. So I think, as being role model organisations and institutions with the capability, with things like the Green Book, the technical knowledge, there really is every opportunity to make sure that what you do and the buildings you are in are addressing the climate emergency and help to maintain the relevance of the sector.
I noticed on your website in the FAQs it says that there's at the moment no accreditation system for sustainable and green theatre or theatre buildings. Is that across the board, or is that something that the Green Book is hoping to establish, do you think?
We're not trying to be a organisation or an entity that approves or marshals this. We're trying to draw on the collective enthusiasm and provide the guidance. I think in setting out to do this, we wanted it to be a collaborative, collective effort, not one of policing and point scoring over one another. Running viable theatres is such a commercially, socially challenging thing to do. We wanted to assist, not police, and provide the tools that were necessary. So there isn't at present any intention to become a monitoring organisation or anything like that. We wanted this to be very much something that was built around collective, enthusiastic response to addressing the climate emergency.
It's brilliant, Andrew. Well, the material online certainly comes across really encouraging. So I hope the uptake is phenomenal. And thank you very much for sharing everything with us today.
No problem. My pleasure.
And thanks to you, Phil, for being here today. And we'll see you all next month.